You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hi, everyone. We're back at Stellar Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tudor Francu. And again, I have a great guest today, Jessica Jones from Philadelphia, with an interesting approach to medical professionals who dabble into the financial world and want to grow their practice, want to sell their practice, and want to become more independent. Jessica, thanks for coming over.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
It's my pleasure. So let me ask you straight away, why do you think doctors and medical professionals in general are so stubborn to do whatever they want to do the way they want to do things? And it's very hard to accept advice, very hard to accept not only business advice, but, in general, like how they structure their own company, their own office, their own clinic. What's going on?
I love how you start. You go right in head on. They're not all stubborn. Many of them seek me out because they know they need help. But as far as being stubborn and accepting advice, they're brilliant, and they're brilliant in one area, right? And they've focused all of their energy on that. And it's hard to accept. But the fact is, some of them realize, I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I'm not feeling passionate about my work. I want to make the money I deserve to make. And it's uncomfortable to be a fish out of water and say, I know I'm brilliant, but I don't know anything about starting a business and running a business and managing people. And it's uncomfortable. And so
They don't teach us in medical school.
Yeah, it's hard to forget about just doctors. It's hard for a lot of people to admit, hey, I need help. And so it's being vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And then finding the right help. A lot of people I talk with have had a lot of bad experiences with just misguided help that, you're going to do it this way. And they say, oh my gosh, I was working with this person and it made me so miserable.
Yeah, I think one of the major things that I encounter in my circles is that partnerships don't work most of the time.
Yeah.
It's very hard for people to get good partners, long-time partners, and partners that you can trust. And I think that's the main complaint I get from people having their own offices or clinics or whatever medical practices. And the fact that, partnerships disintegrate, make people to go on their own, be like solo practitioners or solo clinics or solo providers, and they want to restrict themselves to what they can do themselves. And then in itself becomes an issue at some point, because there's so much you can do by yourself. And you're going to have to start reaching out for help like you. What can you advise people in that situation?
I deal with a lot of partnerships and, unintentionally get into the role of mediation. But the reality is, if I'm able to get in front of a partnership before it's inked, that's the best, because people don't think about these questions. A partnership is harder to get out of than a marriage. And I don't think people realize how serious the paperwork is on a business agreement, right? It's serious. And, you have a great rapport with somebody, you've got great ideas and you think you're sharing the same vision, and you don't realize it's not so different than, you can have a great interview with an employee and you think this person's going to be amazing. And only once they're in there doing the day-to-day do you realize, they really aren't so great, right?
Yeah.
In a partnership, it's when you realize, oh my gosh, this person isn't bringing to the table what I thought, or I'm concerned about the way they're managing people, or, there's some serious things that come up in a partnership that have major implications to you and your business. And, you know, you've got to nip it in the bud right away. And it's very difficult to break out of. So you can either, I myself had a bad partnership. I had a great client that I worked with. He said, "Hey, you've got the business side, I've got the medical side. Why don't you partner with me in the next venture? It'll be even more amazing." And we did. We grew an amazing business with 15 practices in 15 different states. And um, we were lucky. We were able to sell it and part while we still had a relationship. And I still, in fact, I spoke with him last week. Um, but we sold those practices in 2015 because we ended up in mediation, and nobody wants that. You know, when you're talking to legal every week because you have a disagreement about how to move forward with an issue, the only person winning is the legal team,
Yeah.
right? It's not the patients, it's not the
Yeah.
partners, it's not the business. Um, so,
Interesting.
so what I would say is you've got to ask these questions before you enter into the agreement. Who's going to bring what to the table? Is it really a 50-50 partnership, or am I going to be doing, like, is this equitable? What about what's your management style? How do you see onboarding people and managing people? And what is your tactic if things aren't going the way you want it to go? How are you going to handle that? These are real things that a lot of people don't discuss, and then they get into it and you see somebody's management style is very different than yours, and many times can be harmful because it can be a dictatorship or more of like a, you know, I'm doing this, and then the staff is in discord with the team and leaving. And so these are important questions to ask in advance when you're starting a partnership.
Yeah, I agree with us. Let's go back a little bit
Yeah.
to your journey. Can you give us a little overview of where you started? What have you
Yes.
done, and where are you now?
Yeah. With in an attempt not to be too in depth and bore everyone, I started out on the corporate side in marketing, became, you know, very highly regarded marketing person, started an international division for my company and thought I'd retire there forever. You know, I was leading the region. I was overseeing training for the country. I started an international division and the company went chapter 7 in 2000.
Okay.
Yes, in 2008, which happens. And you know, in 2008, a lot of people who were restructuring their finances had that happen. But for me, it was a complete shock. And I was very lucky. So living in Philadelphia, it just so happens that there's political business that's marketing through our region, and there's pharmaceutical business, and those are the two primary things coming out of the area. So I had no problems with having opportunities. And among the opportunities was working, you know, pharmaceutical companies hiring me to work directly with study sites to fill difficult clinical studies. And in doing so, I was helping with everything. I mean, it went beyond helping to get patients into the practice and enrolled. I was going in and doing a deep dive to find out, well, why aren't patients coming in and enrolling here? And was it the front desk? Was it the way that calls were being handled? Was it something else? And so doctors started referring me to doctors, and I got this reputation and was able to help a number of practices that wanted to grow beyond what their expectations were. In some cases, I helped people grow to multiple locations. In you know, as many as, you know, I had a physician that I helped grow to 18 locations. He did not even have an interest in growing, but that's where he ended up being, right? And so with that reputation, doctors just kept referring to me, and I kept growing this portfolio of kind of being able to solve problems within a practice.
Was this a side business for you at that time?
No, so you know, it became, you know, I basically was coming on board as a person to help grow the practice through marketing, but I really was consulting, right? Because I was doing beyond the marketing. I
Right.
was talking to every employee. I was listening to the phone calls, getting to the heart of whatever was going wrong in the practice that
Yeah.
was harming it or preventing it
It's
from
funny
growing.
how things evolve like this
Yeah.
sometimes, and you find yourself in a situation where it's surprising even to you, right? You didn't know you're going to end up here
No.
from the corporate world, and now you're building this business, helping others to build their business.
Yeah.
And it's funny how, especially for doctors who have their offices, and you said, you grew up, 18 other location for someone. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And
Hmm.
we need someone like you to tell us, hey, you can do great things bigger than you think you can.
Yeah.
So I think your role, especially in medicine, is very important, and people need to listen to people like you. Um, I feel like the majority of medical offices and practices, they limit themselves by the way they think.
Hmm.
And when you have someone like you guiding them through how much they can achieve and how big they can think, all of a sudden, sky is the limit.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point though, you have to be open to it, and you have to listen. I'm not going to deny that there's people who hire me and then they don't follow recommendations and things like that. Um, and I'm not like other consultants. I don't have some one specific system that you must follow. I come into the practice, I look at the practice, and I ask what your goals are, and we work towards those goals, and I help you work towards them, and I identify areas where you might not be thinking you can grow. Um,
So
but
what do you think makes you successful then?
I think that when you uh, what makes me successful, I think I'm very
Yes.
lucky. I'm a hard worker, but I think I'm a good listener, and I don't think a lot of people come to the table and really listen to
Yeah.
others.
That's
Um,
that's a bigger problem than we think.
I say to a lot of people, communication solves a lot of problems, right? I'm a good communicator. Um, but I think that I'm also really lucky. I just had a unique opportunity and experience from a very young age. I mean, by the time I was 24, I was an executive vice president, the youngest executive vice president in this company. And I think that if I had to identify going back in time, the reality, like I can talk about as a young person, I was hired to work at this Coke stand at the Pocono Raceway that my uncle ran. And I was so excited because we were all going to make $100 that day, which was huge. And when the inspectors came in, they said I was too young to work at the Coke stand, and I was heartbroken. Well, some people would have just gone out and watched the races. I went and was like, well, I was supposed to make money today. So I went out and was picking flowers and selling bouquets of flowers in the stands, and it was awesome.
How old
And
were you?
oh my gosh, I was maybe 8 years old.
Yeah.
So I was
It's
young.
funny because I have a similar story. When I was
Oh,
younger, and I did the same thing. I sold flowers for my aunt, and from her garden, taking flowers and selling them. This was back in Romania when I grew up, but it was the same thing. And I see in yourself the same mentality I had at that time.
yeah,
I'm not here to. I was in a beach resort. I could have gone to the beach. Spend my time in a nice way, but I was like, no, 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 I have to make money here.
yes.
So
I love that. That's
yeah,
great.
that's funny.
Yeah, and so tenacity, I think, is something I do identify with, and it's unfortunately, I do think it's something that you have or you don't have. You can't teach somebody that attitude, but
Yeah.
throughout life, that's what like. How did I become that executive vice president so young? I took an internship when I was in college, and I did what they asked me to do. And when all the other interns went home, I said, well, this is what I'd like to do. How can I do it? And I stayed and I worked all day. And, um, you know, that next year I was offered a job, and I was, doing my college in the morning and working at the radio station in the afternoon and waitressing at night and waking up and doing the same thing the next day. Right. So had this breadth of
Hustling.
experience that other people didn't have by the time. Yeah, exactly. So I had job opportunities and
Yep.
just,
Yeah, you create your own future by
yeah,
having that kind of approach, Things happen.
yeah,
The universe like works for you if you have the right attitude. And I think that's what I like about somebody who has the right attitude is that no matter what happens, even if they fall down and they will get up. They will get
yes,
up.
yeah.
Are you a busy medical professional striving to excel in life and work? Stellar Success Podcast brings you the habits and insights of top leaders in medicine and beyond. Discover strategies for balance, growth, and fulfillment in every episode. Follow us on Instagram at Stellar Success Podcast for daily inspiration. Start your journey to success today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel now.
How do you?
I was going to say my
define?
husband. I was going to say my husband says, you're at your best if you're backed against the wall.
Yes.
Because I always say, if you bury me alive, I'll dig my way out. And that is the truth. That is my attitude because I've got people who rely on me, and that's my mindset.
Yeah. Jessica, but success is not always given, and it's not always something that we learn from. I'm sure you went through some setbacks, some things that didn't go right, and you probably learned a lot from them to move you forward. Can you give us an example of anything like this?
Oh, absolutely. Will, I briefly touched on a partnership that just wasn't working. I'm really fortunate that we were able to sell that practice, but I learned so much from that because we were very successful, but the fact that the partnership wasn't good ate away at the success, the financial success. It ate away at what should have been an emotional success, right? Because it was wearing on us to be constantly disagreeing on how to move forward with certain things. And then on top of that, because we were where we were, we had, a CFO in the business that was, siphoning money away at the same time. So it was a huge lesson. And, we didn't notice it because when you're successful and there's profit, it's easy to miss the fact that, hey, there should be more profit, but we identified it finally. And, but so much learning there. Like, first of all, yeah, one of the first things I tell everybody, I can't believe how many medical practices I start working with that have zero eyes on their finances, no P&L reports. They have a bookkeeper, but they're not looking at anything and they have no idea what's coming in and what's going out. They're just, oh, I'm getting my income every month and it's good.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the first things we do. You'd be amazed at how many physicians have no real handle on their retirement plan.
Yeah, this would have been my next question that I want to get into with you because you can offer some solutions here. Speaking of retirement, and I know you're attacking the same issue, is that a lot of them, and I had a lot of colleagues of mine that they got to 65 to 68, they couldn't retire, they had to work 10 more years, and it's heartbreaking.
It is.
Not only that they get burned out at some point, but you just don't want to work anymore, at that level, but you cannot retire. So what are some of the strategies they can employ early on in their career? How can you help them?
Yeah. Well, right away. Well, first of all, I always have to say I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a financial planner but I would connect them with an appropriate fitting financial planner to start building those plans. I would tell them what I've done successfully for myself. As a business owner, there's things that you can do. You can you can hire your children and pay them $12,000 a year. And then by the time they get to college, you've got a college fund, right? You can put them onto a 401k. You can have a 401k with profit sharing, even if your only employees are family, you can do that. And these are things that I learned from my financial planner, I'm very lucky that I, was introduced to this person and she's great. But I promise you, there's somebody near you who's excellent, who can give you the appropriate guidance for you and your practice. But these are just little strategies, but to get that retirement plan underway, to put money aside, to make sure that you've got 6 months of expenses. So many practices I work with are borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. And so I will say, and if you've ever heard me speak, I do consistently say one way to grow is to scale back, because I also see people desperate to make money. And so they're adding and adding and adding and adding, and all it's doing is draining them and taking away their focus. So there's a way to add, and there's right things to add, and there's a time to say, wait a second, what's really making me money? What is taking my focus away and not serving me? And how can I offboard what's not serving me? Right. So scaling back is another way to grow that I talk a lot about.
Efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, so many people add all of this equipment and all of these services that aren't even in their,
Yeah.
if you're not passionate about something and you don't believe in something, it's probably not going to serve your practice well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who
is your target audience? Who can you help? Give us some examples of medical practices that you got in and you got some success out of it.
Yeah, so cash medical practices for sure. I'm working a lot.
What do you mean?
With,
you don't work with the insurances?
I do actually. I was just about to say, one of the areas that I've really gotten involved in this past year is mobile wound care. I had several companies approach me that don't do it the right way, and I have a great company that approached me that I'm very passionate about and love working with them, and actually I'm connecting them with doctors to help them implement it the right way, because it's an underserved area. There's more wounds than practitioners who know how to care for them, and it's lucrative, but has to be done 1,000% the right way. It has to be compliant, appropriate. And so that's a great area that's insurance based. I work with a lot of practices that are a hybrid of insurance and cash. And so it's just knowing what to do. But who do I work with? I mean, dentists, chiropractors, physicians, nurse practitioners, you name it. I do, and it's always in the medical area, just because that's the expertise I've grown into. But anybody who is looking, I will say also, there's a lot of, I hate to say PTSD, but that's what it feels like to me. There's just a lot of people who've been beaten up in the medical industry, whether it's by administrative things or private equity coming in, just beaten up, or the pandemic, whatever it may be, that have lost their passion.
Yeah.
And they're looking for, how can I make money and do what I want to do, but be profitable at it and not have my soul crushed every day.
Right. Well, the key word there is cash.
Yes.
Right. And so I think people need to realize that the whole insurance system in medicine is something that definitely can help someone, but definitely can break someone. So I'm not against insurances, but if you have a medical practice that's a cash-based income, that's definitely the mode of choice here. The problem is, how can you transfer the mentality and the mindset of a medical clinic to think from the regular way of claiming insurances to transfer their mindset to a cash business?
Yeah. I think you'd be surprised, and I see much more now. So, I mean, I've been working in this consulting capacity really as far back as 2009. But I would say the shift happened after the pandemic where people started saying like, I get it. Like I've got to be able to add some cash type of services or do something cash based, right? And
Yeah.
I think the public as well, I think some people get it that insurance isn't serving them and that they need to seek out wellness out of pocket.
Yeah.
And if you're doing something the right way, people are going to be willing to pay for it. And a big question I get asked by a lot of practitioners, because you guys are trained to not ask for cash, right? Not ask for money, not even think about money. And so there's a big discomfort. And it's often I get this like, well, how do I, how do I do this? And I say, it's not like you're going in like I hate, using these, like, I hate to say like, but like, it's not like you're going in there like one of these like caricatures of a salesperson, right? You can go in with the right heart and the right attitude. And it's not about the money. It's about, is this right for the patient? Because if it's not right for the patient, you're certainly not going to go in and sell it to them. You're not there just to sell stuff. You're in there to do the right thing for the patient. And if you keep that mindset, you will be successful because they don't want to be sold. But if you have something that's going to benefit them and it's truly the right thing for them and you approach it that way, it's going to work
Yeah.
for you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it does. And
it
usually
takes,
after some coaching like that, they go in and they have the conversation. They're like, it felt good, right?
well, that's my point. Yeah, too. I think it needs training.
Yeah.
It needs
Oh, it
mental
definitely
training
does.
and physical training, how to approach a patient with that subject, because it's touchy. We're not used as doctors to go in, the office and talk to a patient and say, hey, this is going to cost you this much, and if you don't do it, we're going to put late fees, and if you don't pay your bill, we're going to get you to collection and all the stuff. We don't talk about this.
Yeah.
But like you say, it takes a little training and coaching about this
Yeah.
subject. So
One
how
of the
can we
mentor,
do
one,
this?
oh,
How?
I was going to say one of the mentors I had said to build a great business, build yourself first because you will lead by who you are. So if you're a good person, you'll build a good business. And I really like
I
that.
love
And
that.
I tell my clients that because I don't have a client that isn't coming at it from a good heart and a good place and wanting to do good and get back into what they're passionate about, which is helping people and serving people, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I say you're already there because you're already approaching this from the right heart and being a good person. So you can build a good business, you can build a great business.
Yeah.
Let's do it, right?
Exactly.
Now
That's a
let's
great
do it.
advice.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to you personally as a successful entrepreneur. What do you think are some routines and habits that you have every day
Ah.
that make you this successful?
So anyone who works with me probably knows this by now, but this is another thing I got. I got this from Bell Leadership at the University of North Carolina. I was really lucky to participate in a leaders roundtable there when I was very young. I mean, it was amazing. I was there when the owner of Radio Flyer was talking about moving manufacturing to China, and we were part of that conversation and decision making. So that was the caliber of group it is. And Dr. Bell is really well regarded and just a great leadership mentor. And one of my big takeaways from him, and again, I was lucky because most people never get that training, and the people who do are usually in their almost in their retirement years, right? Is when you get into these CEO level
Yeah.
roundtables. So I was lucky. And it became part of who I am. And one of the big takeaways is you only have 100 problems a day. And so when I say that to people, they say, oh, I've got thousands of problems a day. No, it's everybody has 100 problems a day. It's what you choose to focus on as the problem that defines you, right? And so when I talk to somebody who's complaining about traffic or red lights or rushing around, I say, that is not your problem. That's not what you're going to focus on. You need to set your sights bigger. And so I do approach every day like that. Like everything that comes at me, I decide, is it a problem that I need to focus on, or is it something that I can't control? And if I can't control it, I don't put it on my plate, right? And I do think that's a huge habit that everybody should try to do, is just kind of say what's in your control. And I send that out to clients a lot. Like I send out like, can you control this? And if not, don't focus on it.
I love this.
Another thing that I do that I think is really important and helps me is whatever I don't want to do that I have to do, I do first. I do it immediately, the first thing I do in the day. That way otherwise it's sitting on my shoulders, it's hanging on me, it's weighing down every single thing I do the rest of the day. I like to get it out of the way because I know if I don't, it's going to just weigh down everything else. So I tell my clients, whatever you don't want to do it immediately. Get it out of the way because you have to do it. So just do it. Right.
Very nice. Very
I
nice.
also recognize that you get lost in your business if you don't step out of it. Like you have to look at it from the outside. I think that a lot of businesses struggle because they fail to see external threats because they're so in their business that they don't even see what's going on. And it's not just what's going on but what's going on legally, compliance wise, mindset wise. All of these things impact your business, and you can't be aware of them if you're so stuck in your business that you don't take at least an hour a week and kind of look at your business from the outside.
Very interesting. That's a great point.
So,
especially in medicine, a lot of people are working in their business instead of for their business.
Yeah, and I do see, I see practitioners who are starting a business, and it's hard to switch from, you're getting used to seeing 25 plus patients a day, and you're just like going from one thing to the next. You don't even have a minute to breathe. And then in your business, it's a very different feeling, and it can be uncomfortable because you don't have that adrenaline flow. It's a different way of living. And so it's something that takes getting used to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're coming out of, a traditional setting.
It's interesting what you said about control. And I'm thinking that a lot of medical professionals have this issue with control. They want to control everything. They want to control everyone in their office.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what happens, they need to know everything and stuff like that. And I think, like you said, the only thing basically that we can control is ourselves and how we
Mm-hmm.
react to the problems, to the 100 problems you said we're going to have.
Yeah. Yes.
So the more you focus on how you react and how you handle the problem, it's going to reflect on your results.
Well, and especially when you're running your business, you have to realize that everything you do, people follow you because you're the leader. And so you really set
You're
the
an
tone.
example.
Yeah, you set the tone for how everybody else does things. So if you're sitting there not doing the things that you don't want to do and waiting, everybody else is going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I do also see another mistake that people can make is they get these big ideas, they bring it on, and then they just say to the staff, okay, go do this, implement this in the practice, make this happen. And you've got people saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So I see people spending money to implement things, telling their staff to do it, and then nobody does anything. And it's just like lost.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year, it's like, well, wait, I did this, 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 and this. And what happened with it? Well, the staff is saying, well, we were so busy and we didn't know what to do. And we didn't, so it just never was implemented.
Right.
Or worse, there's resentment. Like, oh, he just wants us to do everything and he doesn't realize how much we're already doing. And so a big issue that I see for practices that are already thriving and doing well, but looking for improvement is you've got this staff, they're busy and you're not even meeting with them. So you don't know what's going on. So it's funny because you mentioned the desire for control, but part of that is having communication with the staff and knowing the pulse of everything. And you can't do that without having one-on-ones and group meetings, which I know I get a lot of pushback on, like, oh, we don't have time, but you have to make the time. It's important.
Yeah.
It's
No, I
really
agree. I
important.
think communication in a company like that, it's essential. Um, with all the experience you have and the lesson you learned
Mhm.
and the wisdom you acquired, if you would look back at yourself when you started this whole thing, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Oh my gosh. When I started this, as I mentioned, I'm tenacious and I kind of keep moving. I would say my advice to myself would take the advice I give others today and step back, and try to breathe and see everything from the outside instead of just constantly being in that forward momentum. Because forward momentum is great and it feels great, especially when there's success and things are growing and evolving. But just as I said previously to myself, I would say when you only by stepping back I could have prevented mistakes and identified things before they happened. And I do think I take that advice today. I do frequently take time out of the day to take a step back and think about everything going on and making a plan for how to tackle it.
Yeah, that's
Instead of just keeping on going, I do take kind of step back, kind of make a list. Okay, what are the things going on and what's going to be the best approach?
that's a great advice. I remember reading in a book about Bill Gates that, when he developed Microsoft and, he was very successful, he was making a lot of money and the company grew and whatever. And he would take a week at a time, even a week every 2 months, and go in the mountains, don't do anything, no phone calls, no computers, nothing, just with himself and think about what he did and what he wants to do. And I think it's essential for someone to kind of get this introspection, I would say, into
Yes.
themselves and ask what the goals are and what do I actually want to do with this thing.
Yeah.
So your advice is excellent. I would definitely recommend it.
So it's funny that you say that because it's almost like, especially practitioners, I had somebody say, I'm so sorry. I'm going to be completely off the grid Thanksgiving weekend with my family. It's like, why are you sorry about that?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
critically important. That's something we should all be doing
Yeah.
is giving ourselves time with loved ones. Like, what are we doing this for if we're not doing it to live and love? And
Right.
what is success if we don't have people to share it with? And so, I hate to say it, but one of the things I talk about with success is if you're so buried in your business that you're not paying attention to your wedding, to your marriage and your family, you know, you can't rebuild that. What good is the financial success if you end up getting divorced and dividing everything in half anyway? So focus on your marriage, focus on your family. Those are the things that really matter, that you're going to leave this business at some point,
Yeah.
but your family
But
hopefully is going to be with you
right.
by your
Exactly.
side.
Exactly. So that means that you need to step away from your business and take care of your life, because
Hmm.
finally I read this book that kind of changed my perspective a little bit and the way that the mindset needs to be towards the second half of the life. It's called Die with Zero. And it makes you think about stuff that we do every day in our lives and what is the final purpose of it. And
Yeah.
what are we going to end up with? Because we know we all going to end up in the same way.
Yes.
And what's left for us, and the people are the ones that matter, and the memories that you make are the ones
Mhm.
that matter, and how people think about you after you're not here anymore. um, Jessica, thank you so much for being here. I think your advice and your wisdom in dealing with these things will help a lot of people. How can someone get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, and maybe seek help?
Yeah. So I always direct people. Buildyourcashmedicalpractice.com is my website. I'm easily available. You can schedule one-on-one with me there at no charge. Jessica at buildmycashmedicalpractice.com is my email. And I would be honored for anybody to reach out. And it's been my pleasure and honor to have this time with you. I really appreciate you connecting with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. I hope people will reach out to you because you are a source of business advice, medical practice advice, and maybe a little bit of a different point of view than we're used to.
Yeah.
So I thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.